Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to a different sort of videos. So I thought I would do a little bit of a video where I just talk about the NHL playoffs ahead, because obviously my Ottawa Senators have made the playoffs for the first time in quite a long time since I actually worked at Canadian Tire Center, which was 8 years ago. So I kind of want to talk about obviously the Sens making the playoffs, and then obviously who they're going up against, which is the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm very excited for the playoff run ahead this year. I think regardless if we go out and say round one or round two or something early on, I think it's going to be a really good learning experience for a lot of the guys on the team, because a lot of them are signed into next season. So I'm excited to see how this series basically impacts the future of the players on the team, because I think regardless if we win or lose, it'll basically kind of light a fire under young players like Tim Stützle, under basically want him more hungry and more hungry for a Stanley Cup for the city. And I think it's going to get even better from here on out, regardless of what happens. Like I said, if we go out in the first round, it's not a huge issue. Obviously, it would be nice to win a Stanley Cup right away this season, but I think this is just the beginning of this team becoming good. Like, it's almost like for the Toronto Maple Leafs, for instance, back when they drafted guys like Matthews, Marner, Nylander, all that stuff, when they made the playoffs for the first time with that type of core, they started to make the playoffs. They obviously haven't done too much success since then, so they're a little bit of a vague issue. But with Ottawa, if they're able to build up on each year from here on out, it's a massive win. So very excited to see what we could do in the playoffs this year. It's going to be really interesting going up against Toronto, because the last time the Sens played the Leafs was in 2004, and I don't really remember that series too much. I was a hockey fan at that point in time. I've actually been a hockey fan, for those of you that don't really know, I've been a hockey fan literally since 2003. My first season was the 02-03 season. I started watching probably late 2002. My first ever game was against the Atlanta Thrashers in 2003 in February. So I've been a hockey fan for most of my life, like literally 2/3 of my life. So if the Sens could go far and win a Stanley Cup in one of these upcoming seasons, or this year for that matter, I will be very, very happy, and it'll be probably one of the most incredible things that's happened in my lifetime. So I'm very excited to see where this team goes from here on out. And like I said, they haven't been in the playoffs since I worked at Canadian Tire Center, because I used to work at Canadian Tire Center from 2013 all the way till 2018. So I did witness 1 year of the rebuild when I worked there, and then I left that job because, not a great job. But aside from that, let's talk a little bit more about this playoff series with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So actually, I do need to address this. I meant to do this before I started the video, and I completely forgot. So I need to not go to this screen. I need to go to this screen. Perfect. So what I wanted to talk about anyways is, like I said, this matchup on paper, because there's a lot of Leaf fans that I think that the Sens are going to be an easy cakewalk. And I'm here to basically say my Sens are not an easy cakewalk. I think the Sens are almost built better for the playoffs than the Leafs. I'll get into that in a little bit, basically on how both teams are set up and all that. But with my Sens, obviously right now we're 43-30-6. As you can see on NHL.com, we're currently obviously in that first wildcard spot. We can't get higher than that, and we can't get lower than that. So I'm really impressed with us being in that spot, and I think we're a lot better on paper than teams might think about being down that high, or down that low in the standings. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Toronto obviously won the Atlantic Division, the second best team in the Eastern Conference, so they've had a great year, not going to lie on that front. They've definitely found some of their game that they've been lacking a little bit, like their goals against was way down this year. You can see 228 goals against. Ottawa only allowed 229, so that's one thing that I think is going to be a little bit closer than people think. Ottawa's a much better defensive team. It's not just heavily reliant on the goaltenders too. The defenders have actually been playing a lot better. Chabot, Sanderson's have really good years. Nick Jensen's come in and been a very good stabilizing defenseman for Chabot. And then Artem Zub's been actually pretty solid too. At times he's been a bit more of a mismatch, I'd say. Like, he's had good games, but he's had bad games too. Nick Jensen's usually been good in every game he's played, in my opinion. There's been some bad turnovers and all that, but he usually makes up for them with his good defensive play. And then Chabot's just had a breakout year, I think. And obviously Jake Sanderson is just getting better and better every single season. So from a defensive standpoint, I don't think we're really that far off of being one of the best teams defensively that are in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs, when it looks like it on paper. Like, there's a lot of teams that are good defensively. As you can see, all the teams that are in the playoffs are technically allowing, I guess, like anywhere between 215 to 229 goals against. I'm not including the Montreal Canadiens, because technically, as I'm recording this, they could get still knocked out by the Blue Jackets. So That will be interesting to see what happens with that. But technically, every team that's in the playoffs right now is a good defensive team except for Montreal. But Ottawa's technically the worst defensive team in the bunch, but I still don't think they're that far off of these really high-end type of teams. Like, you do have Tampa that has 215 goals against. A big part of that is because of Vasilevsky, but I think the Sens have the better goaltender than the Leafs on paper, but both teams lack experience with that goaltending in the playoffs. Obviously, Ullmark's the better regular season goaltender, in my opinion, because he won a Vezina recently. I don't know if I would fully trust Stolarz and Woll to get it done in Toronto in the playoffs, but both teams have unproven goaltender in the playoffs because Ullmark doesn't have a lot of career playoff games if we actually go to Ullmark's career numbers here. He only has, like, I think 10 playoff games in his career, if I remember right. Let's see, playoffs, because they readjusted his website. Yeah, he only has 10 playoff games in his career. Not really great stats when you look at it on paper, but he doesn't have a ton of experience, so you can't really say, oh, he's going to be really bad like this, but I think this year has been one of the better years of his career other than the Vezina Trophy winning season, so we'll see if he's playing like this type of numbers or if he's going to do what he does in the regular season, which this year so far he has a .911 save percentage, which is pretty impressive, and the 4 shutouts too. Now, one thing I also forgot to mention, the Sens actually lead the league in shutouts, so we are a very solid defensive team with all that, so just keep that in mind there, Toronto fans, with that type of thing. But like I was saying, the Leafs kind of lack experience in that, and I wouldn't really fully trust guys like Stolarz and Woll to get them wins either in the postseason. So I don't know if goaltending we could really have a full-on argument or like a debate about, because like Stolarz only played the one playoff game in his career with Florida where he did not have good numbers, but obviously he was the backup in the Stanley Cup win last season. You go to Joseph Woll, obviously he's played a little bit more playoff games as of recent, but he's only played 7, so technically Ullmark's played the most of the teams. Woll does have good playoff numbers, but will that continue? Obviously, he also has to stay healthy, which has been a bit of a problem for him to start his NHL career. So I think goaltending is going to be completely up in the air. I didn't mean to close NHL.com, but I think goaltending is going to be completely up in the air with the series in terms of the deciding factor. Now, one thing I think that is going to be a little bit more interesting to see is whose defensive core is better and whose offensive core is better, because from a defensive standpoint, in my opinion, it might be a little bit biased. I think we have the better defensive core on paper, technically. If we look at, let's just sort this by position here and look at all the defenders on the Sens, and then we'll look at the Leafs defensemen as well, and do a little bit comparison on the season each team's defensemen have had. If we look at, say, Toronto's defensive core here to start off with, their highest point-getting defenseman is Morgan Rielly, 41 points in 81 games. We know he's more of an offensive defenseman. He's had a pretty solid year offensively, but we just know that he's not going to do much in terms of the defensive stuff. You look at the Sens' best defenseman, Jake Sanderson, 55 points, minus 12, but he was playing a lot of the year with Hamonic, so I think that's why that plus-minus is so bad. Jake Sanderson's had a really good year, and if you watch the Sens a lot, you'd actually realize that. So technically, I would take Sanderson over Morgan Rielly quite easily. So let's get rid of Morgan Rielly from this and keep Jake Sanderson selected, and then we could see who has more better defenders. Thomas Chabot, 45 points, plus 17, playing next to Nick Jensen this year. He's had a very good year offensively. I think one of the best of his career, and also a great plus-minus. You look at the next best Toronto defenseman, OEL. 29 points is good. Plus 14. Not much better. I would say they're pretty even in terms of defensive play, but Chabot does have the offensive upper hand. Obviously, offense isn't everything, but I'd still say this one's pretty damn close, so maybe we just call that one a spade, so it's even. Nick Jensen, very good defensive season, also 21 points, not too bad. The next best Leaf is Jake McCabe, who's 23 points and a plus 23. I think both those guys are pretty even, almost on paper when you think about it. Both had similar point totals, similar plus-minus, so let's just call them the exact same. Chris Tanev is a plus 30 with 17 points. That's where it gets a little bit interesting, because he's probably got better defensive results than Zub for sure, and he also has more offensive numbers, so I'd probably give it to Tanev over Zub, but Zub can play good shutdown minutes too, so it's not like he's a slouch by any stretch. So right now I'd say it's pretty even. This is where I think the Leafs kind of lack a little bit, but also we kind of lack a little bit too, gonna be honest. Cleven's had a solid year, but he is minus 12. There has been sometimes when him and Montpaulo or Hamonic, for instance, have played bad defensively. So these three defensemen on our team, I'd say right now, are a big wild card is Clevin, Hamonic, and Montepallo. I would say the same thing, though, with the Leafs, though, to be honest, because Benoit, I wouldn't say he's a great defenseman. 10 points is okay for a DFD, plus 12 is good. So it's not like he's been a bad player, but he is a bit, like, lacking discipline. I know he's more of a physical player. I wouldn't say he's a great defenseman in any world. I would put him still on the same path as being as good as Clevin, or maybe as good as Montepallo at the moment. Aside from that, though, like, Connor Timmins isn't there anymore. He's in Pittsburgh. Phil Myers is kind of a bit of a weak link, too. I don't think he's been bad in Toronto. I just think he's more of an AHL defenseman, not an NHLer fully. Like, he could be a depth defenseman, but that means he's pretty much the exact same type of thing as like a Hamonic or a Montepallo, maybe even a Clevin at best. So tough to say on that. Brandon Carlo's obviously been good since acquiring from Boston, so that's probably where you could give maybe, say, Toronto a little bit of a leg up with Carlo in a sense. I would get rid of Mermis, and Liljegren's not there anymore anyways. So I feel like defensively it's pretty close because Dennis Gilbert's likely going to be a healthy scratch. He's more of just a physical defenseman. I think he's kind of close to being like Simon Benoit almost in a way, or Simone Benoit, whatever it's pronounced as. But Sabrango's not going to be probably playing in the playoffs. So realistically, these defensive cores I think are pretty damn close. I think the slight edge might go to us in terms of at least offensive numbers because Sanderson and Chabot are much better offensively. Technically, their best offensive defenseman in Toronto is Riley in OEL. So I think it's going to be a close series defensively. But I think we might play a better defensive game. Or they might play a better defensive game because of the regular season and the goaltending numbers. But we might have an offensive upper hand in that sense. But then when it comes to forwards and stuff like that, now we're not going to break this down as in depth as D did with the defenders, but one thing I'm a little bit concerned about for Toronto fans, not that I would be concerned for Toronto fans anyways, I had to throw a little shot there, is their lack of physical players. I don't think they really have a playoff-built team in a sense. Like, when you win the Stanley Cup, you have to have these type of grind lines that wear down opponents. I don't really think they have that. Now, I know that could be controversial. I know Matthew Knies is a good player and he throws a lot of hits and all that, but who are you going to call to if a fight needs to break out? I know Max Domi will fight and drop the gloves, but who else are you going to call on? Nobody's going to want to drop the gloves with Ryan Reeves. So, like, I just don't think Toronto really has the physicality that playoffs hockey is supposed to bring. Obviously, they have the high-end talent with, like, Marner, Nylander, Matthews, Tavares, those type of players. Matthew Knies as well I would throw into that mix. But aside from that, they're very top six heavy. Their depth with like guys like Bobby McMahon isn't terrible. But would you fully trust them in a playoffs to get it done? I don't really know about that. And like I said, I don't think they really have that physicality too much on their team. Like if we sort by hits, they have 8 guys over 100 hits. One of them is Ryan Reeves, who's in the AHL, I think, at the moment, or was. He probably gets called up for the playoffs, my guess. But the Sens have 7 people over 100 hits, but obviously Brady Tkachuk has 227. The next closest on the Leafs is Benoit with 203. Like, Lorentz throws a lot of hits, but he's not going to fight much. Like, he only literally had 9 penalty minutes this season. Like, a lot of their guys that throw the body around don't take a lot of penalties. Meanwhile, in the Sens, we have a lot of guys that throw hits that will also drop the gloves. Like, Brady Tkachuk will fight. Ridley Gregg obviously will fight or get under the skin to people. Tyler Clevin could do that too, for instance. Nick Cousins could obviously do that. So I just think we have a lot more guys that could make Toronto take more penalties than they did during the season in a way. So I feel like maybe because of that, the Sens have an upper hand. Also, I feel like we might have a little bit more experience on our team, even though technically we don't. Like, most of the players on our roster have no playoff experience, but guys like Michael Amadio, who we brought in, very good playoff experience. Obviously, he's won a Stanley Cup. You also have another guy in, where is Perron? There he is. Perron, very good playoff experience as well. Won a Stanley Cup. He's very solid 2-way forward, and he's only coming alive recently. Like, him and Amadio actually had a really good second half of the season, too. So I think those guys could really do some good work. Aside from that, the only other one with a lot of good playoff experience, other than, like, Ullmark, for instance, only 10 games. Highmore's got some games, but Highmore, to me, is not really much of anything, so I wouldn't really focus too much on Highmore. I think somebody like Zetterlund could be underrated in the playoffs. He's never played a playoff game before, but I think he could come in and score some goals. He hasn't scored a lot with us through 19 games, but I think he could do a very good job and just like step up with goals all of a sudden out of nowhere. Claude Giroux, obviously, he's got a lot of playoff experience. Never won a Stanley Cup, but he's got a ton of experience, and I think that's going to help out a lot. Also, his face-off numbers have been fantastic this season, so that will play probably a big factor potentially too. But who was the other player? Wasn't there another player I was looking at with playoff experience? I thought there was, but maybe not. But I just think in general, I think some of these guys that we brought into our team, I guess it would be Nick Cousins and stuff like that. These guys have experience. Those type of guys also are very good in their own end in a way. Like, I wouldn't say Cousins is the best defensive forward in the world, but he's going to bring that physicality and wear down players in the defensive zone. And I think that's where the Sens could outmuscle the Toronto Maple Leafs and win more games than people think. Because I've seen Leaf fans that have said, oh, yeah, we're going to win this series in 5 games, or easy, they're going to win it. I don't think it's going to be an easy out. Like, we obviously could still lose the series against Toronto. I'm not saying we're going to win this series, but I don't think we are going to lose it as convincingly as some people think. Because it just, to me, at least, I think the Sens are built a little bit better, maybe down the middle too. Like, if you look at the Leafs centers, for instance, who has actually been taking majority of the face-offs. Let's just go face-offs 1, I guess. John Tavares, great face-off, man. He wins a lot, but also Claude Giroux wins a lot. Claude Giroux takes a good chunk of face-offs occasionally. Austin Matthews, good face-off, man. David Kampf is good at the draws, but that's pretty much all he is. Max Domi takes some face-offs, but he's more of a winger, it looks like. Holmberg, I wouldn't trust on guys like Holmberg, and everybody else doesn't take a lot of face-offs. Meanwhile, on the Sens, we've been also a very good face-off team this season. I think we're both top 4 or top 5 in the league, so the Sens, obviously, like I said, Giroux's won a lot of draws. Pinto's actually is turning out to be a pretty good centerman. He's on the 3rd line, so Tim Stützle, his face-off numbers haven't still looked the best on paper, but he could still play decently. He can play left wing if we really need to, obviously next to Giroux. Ridley Gregg can win face-offs. He also blocks shots and all that. Like, I just feel like, I don't know, I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. Like, even if we go to the stat department here, I wonder if I could look at it like I did on mobile. Let me see this for a second here. Yeah, if we go to, like, team stats here, just to do a little comparison, you can see the Toronto Maple Leafs 4th in the league. And in terms of goals for, obviously Toronto's a lot better offensively than the Sens are in terms of goals for during the season. They were 7th. Ottawa's all the way down here at 21st. But goals against, if we sort this, as I was mentioning, we are both just at like around the top 10. Toronto's 10th, Ottawa's 11th, so that's pretty damn close. Power play percentage, Toronto is 7th. Ottawa is at 13th, but Ottawa's 23.5%, Toronto's 25%. That's not a huge difference. Penalty kill as well is very close as on paper. Toronto's 16th at 78.1, Ottawa's 19th at 77.9. So both teams have similar penalty kills, similar power plays, similar goals against. It's only 5-on-5 offense. That's the difference right there. And then if you're looking at stuff like, say, shots a game played, Ottawa actually shoots more than Toronto Maple Leafs do per game. Toronto does not shoot a lot, which if they don't shoot a lot on Allmark could stop probably a lot of pucks. Face-off win percentage, you look at this as well. Toronto's 2nd in the league, 53.6% on average. We are 53.1%. So yeah, this is definitely going to be a lot closer series than Leaf fans will actually say, I think, on paper. I think this series probably could go to 7 games. Will it go 7 games? Not guaranteed, but I think it's definitely going to be up in the air in terms of who wins this. I don't think it's just an easy cakewalk for the Leafs like people think. I think it could be definitely another disappointing year for Leaf fans, but I think also if the Sens lose, I'm not going to be fully disappointed because I know that this is just the beginning of a team that could eventually win some Stanley Cups here in the next probably 3 years or so. So anyways, that's my thoughts on the Sens making the playoffs and also facing the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs. Thought I would do this for a little bit of a different video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I might do some other videos on the Ottawa Senators occasionally, but it's been a while since I've done one, so I was like, hey, might as well give my thoughts and see what you guys have to say about it. I know a lot of you guys that subscribe to me are probably Leaf fans. There's probably a lot of Sens fans as well, but I'm just curious on all your guys' thoughts on the playoffs ahead as well. Obviously, almost every single playoff matchup is locked in stone, obviously, except for Montreal if they're actually going to make it or not. I hope they actually fail and Columbus makes it, just because Columbus used to be like my second team at one point, so I would like to see Columbus in over Montreal, but I know a lot of Montreal fans would absolutely hate me for that. So anyways, let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time.